Welcome to the Dr. Wyatt Show podcast. For developing a long-lasting, happy relationship is the status symbol to achieve, and following my tools is a path to help get you there. I'm your host, Dr. Wyatt Fisher, a licensed psychologist specializing in couples counseling. Today I'm going to talk about why a top relationship goal for your relationship should be you not giving up on making bids. So what is a bid? A bid is any time you make a gesture for connection. That connection could be for emotional intimacy, or for physical intimacy, or for quality time, or for appreciation. Any time that you make a bid for connection on some level, that's you making a bid. That's you making a gesture. That's you saying to your partner, hey, I want to connect on this level, or I need something in this relationship. That's a bid. But what happens over time is we learn that those bids don't go very well. So we stop making the bid. We stop making that bid for emotional intimacy. We stop making the bid for appreciation. We stop making the bid for quality time. We stop making the bid for physical intimacy because we've been conditioned through the years of it doesn't go very well. So why make the bid? But when you stop making bids, several negative things happen to you and the relationship, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. And that's why this should be one of your top relationship goals, is to never stop making bids. So when that's you, when you've noticed through the years, what's the use? Why make a bid for these connections? It doesn't go anywhere. My partner either ignores my bid, they get angry at my bid, or they don't even notice my bid. And none of those feel good to the person making the bids, so why make the bid? I'm going to stop making those bids. But when that happens, 5 negative things occur. The first thing that can happen is a part of you dies. These bids that we make are a part of who we are. If you're an emotionally oriented person and you want to feel that emotional closeness, that's who you are. That's a part of you. And so if you stop making that bid in your marriage, a part of you is going to die. If you're a physical person and you really appreciate sexual closeness because that helps you feel connected and loved, and you stop making a bid for sexual connection, a part of you is going to die because that's just who you are. You're wired to feel loved and to feel close in that way. If you're wired for quality time together, but you stop making bids for quality time, a part of you is going to die because that's who you are. You need that to breathe. You need that quality time together. So that's one reason. Don't ever stop making bids, because the moment you stop making bids is the moment a part of you starts to die. Here's the second reason. You start feeling trapped. So if you start feeling like, I'm not going to make those bids anymore. I'm going to stop reaching out for that connection because it doesn't go well. My partner ignores it, or they don't even notice it, or they get angry. So I'm just going to stop. When you start doing that, you're going to start feeling trapped, because in that moment, marriage just turned into a prison, because that starts feeling like there's no way out. I can't get my needs met. I can't make a bid for connection, or if I do, it doesn't go well, so I'm just going to give up. I'm going to just stop making those bids. But when you do that, you're going to start feeling trapped, that you're trapped in this relationship, this long-term relationship, with no hope that you can have your needs met. It's going to make you feel trapped when you give up on making the bids. A third thing that's going to happen if you give up on making the bids is you're going to start feeling numb. If you have a core need for something, whether it's quality time or emotional intimacy or physical connection or appreciation, and you give up on making those bids, you're going to feel numb because of the hopelessness of the situation. You're not going to feel like there's any direction. You're going to feel trapped. And all those feelings combined is going to make you feel numb. You're going to start feeling numb within yourself, numb toward your partner, numb in life, because you're going to feel stuck in a relationship without your top needs being met. It's going to make you feel numb when you give up making bids. The fourth reason you don't want to give up making bids is you're going to start walling off. So if you've been conditioned through the years, I can't make a bid for emotional intimacy. I can't make a bid for physical intimacy. I know how it's going to go. It's going to end poorly. My partner's not going to respond well. They're going to scoff. They're going to mock me, or they're going to ignore me. When that happens and then you give up, I'm not going to make that bid anymore. When that happens, you're going to start walling off because you're not going to feel safe in your relationship anymore. You're going to start detaching. You're going to start withdrawing. You're going to start blocking. You're going to build walls. You're going to wall off from your partner. And that's going to make everything worse in your relationship. But that's what we do to survive. When we feel like our needs are not being tended to sensitively in our relationship, we wall off for survival. But that hurts us and it hurts the marriage because now we're walled off, we're detached, but we do it to survive because we're so unhappy. But it makes it even worse in the relationship. A fifth reason to not give up on making bids is you're going to start feeling hopeless. If you've given bids a lot through the years and you've learned it doesn't go well, your partner doesn't respond well to your bid for emotional intimacy or physical intimacy or for affection or for quality time or appreciation, you've learned through the years that doesn't go well, so you start giving up. I'm not going to make bids anymore. And when you do that, hopelessness sets in because you start feeling like things are never going to get better. It's learned helplessness. You learn that nothing works. I make these bids and it doesn't go well, so now I'm giving up on the bids. And now I feel hopeless because I don't know what else to do. I don't know what else to try. I've learned to become voiceless. I've learned to become powerless. My most important needs are not being tended to in this relationship. And so not only do I feel trapped and all these other negative things, but the end result is I start feeling hopeless in this relationship. And people do not tolerate feeling hopeless very long. They can start feeling depressed. Their health can deteriorate mentally and physically. It's a horrible feeling to feel hopeless in your marriage. And that's why this should be a relationship goal. You don't want to give up on making bids. So this creates the question, what do you do if you're in a marriage and your partner doesn't respond well to your bids? A couple ideas. The first thing is talk about this with them. Talk about this pattern. Talk about them. Sit down with them and say, hey, we need to talk about the bids that I make and the bids that you make. First of all, to even use this language can be helpful and to identify what are the bids that we're making. Maybe we're just missing the bids. So let's first talk about what are the core needs under the bids. Is it physical intimacy? Is it emotional intimacy? Is it affection? Is it quality time? What are the needs underneath the bids? And then second, what do those bids look like? Maybe they're not obvious enough to your partner. And third, maybe your partner is unable to meet those bids because their needs aren't being met either. And so maybe there's a vicious cycle happening in your relationship, and you have to talk about that with your partner. Because maybe if you could start responding more to their bids, they're going to start responding more to yours. And so you have to talk this through with your partner and figure out what's the problem. Why are we not sensitively responding to one another's bids? Have we given up? Have we surrendered? And that's why this needs to be a relationship goal, is that we're not going to surrender. Do not surrender your needs in your marriage. Do not give up on what you need in your marriage. You have to talk about it. Bring it up. Maybe there is a vicious cycle you're not aware of. Maybe you're doing things that's contributing that you're not aware of. Maybe your partner doesn't realize you're making these bids. If you do that step and your partner still is resistant and refuses to make any changes, work with a counselor, work with a coach. I have a team of coaches that work for me. When my practice gets full, I refer down to my coaches and I supervise them once a week for this reason, so that they can work with couples to help couples resolve their resentments. Because you can't be sensitive to one another's bids when there's resentments. So often that's the clog in the pipes that have to be resolved before you can start sensitively responding to one another's bids. And so if that's you, if you have tried to talk about this with your partner and you start hitting a wall and they're resistant to meeting your needs and responding to your bids, see a therapist, work with a coach. You can email me to see one of mine, info@drwyattfisher.com, or go to my website and click on coaching, and that's where you can book your first session to work with one of my coaches. You need help to work through this impasse. If you go through working with a therapist or a coach for 3 to 6 months and your partner is still resistant, if they still refuse to be open to your bids, they still refuse to respond to your bids, then it's time to get a separation. Because at that point, if you stay with them, you're just enabling them. And you're sending them the message that it's okay to not meet my needs. It's okay to not respond to my bids. It's okay to not be responsive to what I need in this relationship. If you stay with them after that point, after you've tried therapy or coaching for 3 to 6 months, and they still refuse to make any changes, at that point, it's healthy to get a separation. And ideally, that separation sends a wake-up call which says, this is not okay. For us to move forward, there needs to be some changes. We need to start being more sensitive to one another's bids. So that's why you don't ever want to give up on making bids. You don't ever want to surrender. That needs to be a top relationship goal, because when you give up, all these things happen. The first thing that happens is a part of you dies. The second thing is you start feeling trapped. A third thing is you start feeling numb. A fourth thing is you start walling off. And a fifth thing is you start feeling hopeless. And this happened in my own relationship. So because of the trauma in my partner's early years, she avoided physical intimacy. And so I got conditioned through the years to not bring up physical intimacy, to not initiate anything physically, even though that's a top core need for me. And so I got conditioned to not initiate, to not bring it up, to not make any bids for connection physically. Because when I would, it would go poorly. She would get angry, or she would ignore the bid, or she would avoid the bid, or not even notice the bid. It didn't go well. And so I got conditioned through the years to just give up. Stop making bids. And that's what I did. I stopped making bids for a while. For several years, I stopped making bids. And I experienced all these things. I experienced a part of me dying. I experienced feeling trapped. I experienced feeling numb. I experienced walling off. And I experienced feeling hopeless. And because we had such an impasse, thankfully, we finally reached out and started working with a trauma therapist to deal with all the trauma from her past, and then the trauma in our dynamic, and then what to do about it. And we were working with a trauma therapist. We saw several for about 5 years. And through that, I learned to gain my voice back. I learned to not surrender my bids. I learned how important it is to keep moving forward and having a voice with what I need in the relationship, while I was also learning to be more sensitive to what my partner needed and how I can show up better for her, which then optimizes her showing up for me. And so I've been through this process. I've personally experienced this, so I know what it feels like to give up and to stop making bids. And that's why this needs to be a top relationship goal for you. Don't do that. Don't follow that path, because it leads to those negative things. And instead, keep your voice. But explore it, unpack it, discuss this with your partner. Why are our bids falling on deaf ears? And then if that falls on deaf ears, work with a coach or a counselor to see improvement. And if that doesn't work, get a separation for a wake-up call. Thank you for listening to the Dr. Wyatt Show podcast. The best way to pay this forward, if this was helpful for you, is to share this episode with one other person. For more resources, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, your marriage is alive. So if you care for it and nurture it, it will grow. But if you deprive it and neglect it, it will wilt and die. The choice is up to you.